when you first found out that Daddy didn't believe anymore in our church and being a Mormon? What did you feel?
I kind of felt sad, and I felt like Dad was trying to avoid me.
What did you want to say to him?
I wanted to say, can you please come back? It was a very hard time for me.
What would you pray for?
I would say, please, please, please bless that Daddy will come back to the church.
Welcome back to Unequally Yoked. I am Neal Winters.
I'm Naomi.
And we are talking to couples who are in mixed faith marriages.
Or non-believing and believing.
Yes.
Particularly us.
Yeah. So before we start, I want to talk a little bit about our introduction to this podcast, the introduction that you just heard. That is, to me, I've played that introduction to several people, and it usually tears at their heartstrings, whether they're atheist or believer. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on that. In fact, I'm going to let Naomi talk a little bit about that if you're okay with that, Naomi.
Sure. So we were trying to figure out what we were going to put on our intro, and I had two of our boys come and just sit in front of the microphones while I asked them questions, and tried to have them say certain phrases, or some of our kids say certain phrases, and I think the most poignant, honest answer that we got was from him.
Yeah, it was the very first one.
Our little, what is he now, 10-year-old? He's
10.
Not that little anymore. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that was just it in a nutshell. That's how he answered my questions when we were first going through all of this. So
yeah. And one thing about it was that I did not include kind of the tail end of your questions, Naomi, where he talks about how he feels closer to me and how he feels like we can talk really well together.
Yeah, maybe that should be our outro.
Maybe it should. I just felt like a good intro would be him talking and sharing those honest feelings, because
that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're being honest here. And you know, as we go through this podcast, I don't want every podcast to be hit you over the head with emotion heavy.
Let's cry.
Yeah, we've got to have fun, and I think we will tonight. I'm guessing we'll be a little bit more serious. We haven't planned out tonight's podcast a lot.
Well, not planning worked for us the first time.
Yes, it did.
Apparently.
So we'll see how it goes this time. And if you can't tell, we've got a little bit better sound equipment now than we did the first time. So we are actually in the Winters Quarters studios here in North Carolina.
Good play on words.
That's what I went for.
You're so punny.
You're punny. Naomi's dad loves puns.
I love puns too, Daddy.
Hopefully he'll hear this and will approve when he gets a chance. So
I would like to talk a little bit more about Jordan's side of I would like to talk a little bit more about Neal's side of his journey and the feelings that surrounded him as he was having all these different changes of heart and changes of mind and finding out things and what you were going through. So tell us the first time you were traveling alone.
Yes.
And you were reading some scriptures.
Yeah, so
And what occurred to you?
Yeah, so first of all, I spent the last 6.5 years on the road, almost full time. Like, I was on the road. The year has 52 weeks in it. I was probably on the road 40 out of those 52 weeks, 40 to 45.
And we are talking Sundays at 2 p.m. till Friday nights at 8 p.m.
So I had a lot of time on my hands.
Every week.
Yeah. So when I very first started this job, which was in 2008, I was in Vernal, Utah, and I'd set a goal for myself to read the Book of Mormon regularly and try and improve on it. And before, when I'd read the Book of Mormon, I always thought, there's no way that this was written by a single person, and it seems there are too many deep thoughts and interesting thoughts in this for one person to have come up with. And then one night while I was in a hotel in Vernal, Utah.
You already said that.
I know. It was, I was reading the Book of Mormon, and the thought, this may not be true, entered my mind. This doesn't seem believable.
Where did you think that thought came from? Like, where did it come from? Just out of the blue?
It came out of the blue. It was, it just appeared. Like I felt like I had been fighting all my life to believe it. And then it was almost a relief. Like, maybe I don't need to fight anymore. Maybe I can just not believe and think that this is fiction.
Wow. When you say it was a relief, what do you think it would be a relief from?
Trying to fight to believe, even though, well, let me backtrack a little bit. In the LDS religion, which I'm sure a lot of you listening are LDS or are former LDS, we're hoping that you're listening to this with your spouse. But in the LDS religion, a big thing that every person is supposed to have is a testimony, where the Spirit speaks to your heart and tells you through a burning in the bosom or warm feelings or good feelings. Naomi, is that right?
Yeah, I'm not simplified. It's like a little warm blanket, like if you're a kid being wrapped up with a warm blanket. It happens to everybody in a different way.
Yeah.
You know it when you feel it, you're kind of like, what's that?
Yeah, so I had on my mission had, quote, known that it was true. I had no doubt about it. And then after I got home from my mission and a few years had gone by, and I'd started thinking about what I was reading and having more questions, I was fighting more and more to believe every time that I read. And then that night, and well, let me backtrack. And before that, I was always looking for reasons to believe, like proofs in the text. Well, there is a scripture that says the natural man is an enemy to God. And I thought, well, that is a deep thought. There are all these phrases that always seem to be like, Joseph Smith was a smart, but he could have never come up with these things on his own. And then it was just like out of the blue. This may not be true. It just hit me all of a sudden for no particular reason.
Yeah. Did you keep reading?
I did. I don't remember much after that thought, though.
Yeah.
That was the night when I just kind of said, this may not be what I thought it was.
Yeah. So would you, like, how long from then did it happen? Like, okay, so take me from then until when you felt like, okay, I really need to research, talk to somebody about this. Did you just sit on it for a while, let it stew? Tell me how that goes. Okay,
so I was on the road when that hit. Then you had our last child. And so I was at home while you were recovering. And your brother had left the church. Well, he was in a high leadership role in the church, but he'd left it. And you and I and your sister and her husband at the time had talked about how could he ever have lost his feelings of truth? How could he no longer know? And we had speculated as to things that he had done or thoughts he must have had, that there was just, to me, the idea that he left because he no longer believed seemed very strange. Like something external must have motivated him to want to leave. But I thought, I want to reach out to him and let him know that he's loved regardless of his beliefs.
That was always very important to both of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And let him know that I don't care what he believes. He's still an important person in my life, and he still is.
Yeah. He's my brother.
Yeah. So I reached out to him and we started corresponding back and forth. And as much as you want to blame him for it, he did. As much as you want to blame him for it, Naomi,
it helps to have somebody to blame.
Yeah.
It's not someone that you have to live with.
Yeah. Out of the blue, he sent me some emails of things that got me thinking, like that started confirming what I thought that night when I was reading the Book of Mormon. He didn't provide me with everything, but he provided me with enough that I started
to look further,
to start questioning and to look further. What?
We had a perfectly fine thing going, and now it's all complicated.
Yeah.
Why'd you have to stir it up?
How do you feel about that?
Well, I knew it. In my heart, I knew it. You kept telling me, no, it wasn't that, blah, blah, blah. But
no, it wasn't what he provided me that led me out.
Crap. You wouldn't have kept looking. You would have done what most Mormons do, where they go, oh, I guess I need to do ABC to get more righteous and feel the Spirit more and get back into it. That's what you do. It's what you've always done. Roller coaster.
What do you mean?
Read your scriptures, say your prayers, go to the temple, read more faith-promoting stories, read more doctrines that you like. Look for, if you have questions, look for answers from sources that say it's true and here's why. Here's what's wrong with these questions. You know, that the answer isn't what you think it is. That's where people usually go.
Yeah, well, I will say he started me questioning, but then it was very important to me to read firsthand accounts of what happened during Joseph Smith's time.
Did you want it to be true or not be true?
I tried to be open.
Okay, but be honest. You said you were relieved.
Yes, I was.
When you thought it might not be true.
I was, yeah. I was. I felt like a big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The expectation that I still believed, to me, my personal expectation, not everybody else's, but my personal expectation had been lifted. I no longer had to believe I no longer had to justify those beliefs in my own mind to myself all the time. I didn't have to read the Book of Mormon and say, well, this has to be true because it says this.
Is that really how you were reading it?
Yes.
So you're sure none of that relief was from, oh, now I don't have to try so hard to be different. I'm out here in the world with all these people around me, and I'm this weird, different one.
Well, keep in mind, at the time, I was still traveling in Utah.
Yeah, but come on, hun. The people you're traveling with?
The people I was traveling with...
Your boss, everyone that was your working people.
Mm-hmm.
No. They were different. You were the one that was out.
I was. But to say that I stopped believing...
Oh gosh,
because
it's
of
much
that,
more complex.
Way oversimplifies it.
Yeah, it's much more complex. But I also am trying to say, I feel like you've tried to say, oh, that didn't play into the equation at all.
It may have.
I call BS on that.
It may have played into it at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, I wish I would have kept a journal at the time so I could read back and tell you more specifically what I was feeling. I can only tell you what I remember that I felt.
Right.
And so memory is obviously sketchy.
It is.
we tend to remember things that we want to
what
at the
makes
time.
Sense into our world right now.
Yeah, but I guess I was relieved. I also there was part of me that was like, okay, I don't have to put up this facade. But I will say, that experience happened in March or April of 2008. And my boss at the time, who was from Philadelphia, came and visited me over the summer. So probably June or July. And I remember going into he was staying in a Marriott, and I don't know if most Mormons at least know that every Marriott has a Book of Mormon in the nightstand that you can read. And he was asking me, tell me a little bit more about what you believe as a Mormon. Tell me what the Book of Mormon is about. So I took that opportunity to tell him all about the Book of Mormon, the journey of Nephi and his family across the ocean to America, the coming of the Savior to the American continent. I told him all of that, and he was Jewish. He is Jewish, but he really is pretty much agnostic. He doesn't really believe in a God at all. And I remember thinking, as I told him, do I really believe this? And I said out loud to him, yeah, this is something that I believe. I believe that this is true. So I was still, even through the summer, I was still, I don't know if fighting is the best way to put it, but I was still wrestling with what I believed and what I didn't believe.
Well, you were for what, 5 years?
For 5 years.
5 years.
But that was spurred by something else, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So Naomi, you're asking, did I go to sources that confirmed that were in support of the church, right?
No, not really. There's a certain pattern. If you go into something wanting to believe it, and wanting to save your testimony, you treat it differently than if you go into it going, gosh, it would be a relief. I wonder. It'd be a relief it would be nice if this wasn't right. I wonder if I can find the stuff out there that logically argues that way for me.
Have you had that experience where you've done that?
I've done both. Okay.
I don't think we need to go into that right
But yeah,
now.
so I was just, it seems to me like what would have happened, because it always happened in the past, if somebody hadn't offered that information, that you would have gone and just found an answer that sufficed you, like you always have.
Yeah, so I guess the tactic that I took, so yeah, he gave me information that I read, that I looked at and read, and the arguments made sense. And I read that. But then I said, I am only going to go to source documents. I wanted to read...
Primary source.
I wanted to read what the early leaders of the church actually said. So I read William Clayton's journal, who was Joseph Smith's personal secretary. I read David Whitmer's testimony, I think it was Testimony of Christ or something like that. Those are the two main ones I read, and I printed up a whole bunch of other stuff. And I read a little bit of Fair and Farms, but not much, because I wasn't buying what they were saying.
Mm-hmm. It's very simplified.
It's very simplified.
Very simplified.
So I really, really did try to... I tried to attack it from a non-biased perspective. Like, here is what the pros say, here's what the cons say, and they're taking the same text and interpreting it differently. Why don't I go to the actual text and read what the text said and come to my own conclusion? Which is what I did.
Right. Right.
So does that still make you mad at your brother? There's no reason.
I don't know. He had to do what he felt was right. I'm not being mad is just a feeling that happens. It's just feedback from the world telling me how I want to change behavior or do something different, and I've made peace with whatever that feedback was. I mean, the feedback is basically saying this is uncomfortable in my marriage, and I want to find a reason why, so that I don't have to do what it takes to try to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not I'm mad is silly.
But it still hurts, doesn't it?
It's a feeling, and you have it. And so I rode the wave, and now I'm done writing that. And it didn't last long.
Okay. But I just want to say, being Mr. Happy Guy, it's okay if you are mad.
Oh, shut the front door.
It's okay if you are mad. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, you feel what you feel.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
So much counseling.
But I will say, in corresponding with him, when I first went into that correspondence, like I said earlier, I was convinced that there were external factors that led him to the conclusion that he had made. Maybe he had...
See, and here's what I'm asking from you, okay? I'm asking you to admit that there are not just one or the other, that there's always going to be both. No matter how much you try to stay unbiased, there is always going to be external and internal things that are coming into play.
There may be external things that lead you to that conclusion, or not lead you to the conclusion, that lead you down that road to start the journey. But by the time you make your decision, and sometimes it's not even a decision, it is, okay, this is what I found to be true to me. You've gone way past feelings or relying on other people. You are in it for yourself and researching for your own purposes.
Yeah.
But
it's a path. I mean, that's the thing. It's one step at a time. So you can't say, no, it didn't include this. No, it didn't include that. It only included this. It was a whole slew of things. This was happening in my life. It made me ask this. I got this information. It made me wonder this. That is a dance that happens.
Yeah,
it's not just like, oh, my other choices or my job or the people around me saying this isn't what made me lead to this day, to where I'm at now. That's bull.
I mean, I will say, if I wasn't in the situation that I was in, where I was alone in the basement working and having plenty of time to read personal email while I was at work, sorry, email boss. But if I wasn't in the situation that I was in, I probably would not. I don't know if I would.
We don't know what would happen.
Yeah,
but it'd be different.
It would be different.
Most likely, it would be different.
It was kind of a series of unfortunate events, depending on your perspective, that led me to where I am now.
Yeah.
But now that I am where I am now, I can go and read apologetic literature, and for me, I see their arguments as very, very flimsy and hard to justify. But I don't.
But that's not what this is about.
That's not what this is about. I don't want to. Yeah. And also, in terms of comments on the website, I really don't want to get into debates with you and Naomi, or with me and believers, about whether or not what we say is true, or whether or not the church is true, because that is not the point of this. I mean, I don't want to, I probably say this way too much, but the point of this podcast is not to argue the validity of your religion.
And the time that we're actually going to talk a lot about that, I'm sure, is when you have to decide, are we going to make this marriage work or not?
Yeah.
And the time that you decide is you have to assume neither of you are going to change the other. So can you embrace this person who is before you, who believes what they do right now? Can you be married to that?
Yeah, yeah.
And what's that going to look like? And how's that going to be? Yeah,
so I'm sorry to beat on that drum so much, but I cannot emphasize enough that I do not want to debate the merits of either side of the argument. I think that's a waste of time, and I think all it does is solidifies the other side's perspective. So, anyway, having said that,
You're right and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're wrong and I'm right.
I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah. So,
we have that all straightened out now, guys.
So having said that, I tried to be as unbiased in what I researched as possible.
Yes.
And I remember bringing you things that I thought were relatively unbiased. Well, some were a little bit biased, but I remember bringing you things and you saying, I don't see this the same way that you do. Because you would go and you'd see what I had to say and read what I had to read, and you'd say...
It seemed very flawed.
Yeah.
Very, very flawed.
Yeah, so we both read the same information and came to different conclusions. And that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that sucks.
Yeah, that sucks. So I came to you... So I want to talk a little bit about me pretending to believe.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I came to you in the summer or fall of that year and said, I don't think I believe anymore. And it was scary to admit. It was scary to bring up because this is a person who I love. This is a person who I married because I felt like God had brought us together.
And made promises. That we would believe this way and live our life this way. And
yeah. This is a person who has had 5 children with me.
And I responded very poorly. Very, very poorly.
So I told her, and I was questioning the existence of God at the time. And I know what I remember I did
not know that.
I remember you asking me, do you believe in God? And I know what I remember you saying, but I'm curious if what you remember yourself saying.
Well, the answers from what I saw in you seemed to be, oh, well, yeah, this is silly, but also like, well, wait, I want to see what she's going to say about this. And what I remember that I said was, I don't know if I can be with someone that doesn't believe in God. I can, like, if they believe in Jesus, you know, that can work. But gosh, I'm stuttering. I must be really emotional. But yeah, isn't that what I said?
Yeah.
I said something like,
because I said I
could do that.
Yeah, I said, I don't know if you said, do you believe in God? And I said, I don't know if I believe. And you said, I don't know if I can be with someone who doesn't believe in God.
Yeah, I did.
And I still don't. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
we're still finding out.
We better call the attorneys tomorrow.
So you don't believe in God?
That's up for debate.
Okay, good.
So she told me that, and that's, I hate to say it this way because this is supposed to be a family episode, but that scared the shit out of me. I mean, I was scared. And on the note of the word shit, I remember walking out to the car on the driveway one day as I was going, before you and I talked. And, you know, I rely a lot on my feelings, to good, bad, or indifferent. I do, unfortunately. And I remember walking out to my car and thinking, this is bullshit. This whole thing is bullshit. And it just hit me. And after that, you know, it's like Joseph Smith said, I've seen what I've seen and I cannot deny it. And after that, it was like, I know what I know and I can't deny it. I know what I feel. So anyway, Naomi said, I don't know if I can be with somebody who doesn't believe in God. And I decided right then and there, what's more important to me? I asked myself that question. What's more important to me? My marriage or my beliefs? And I thought of my children, who I loved and still love dearly. I thought of my wife, who I loved and still love dearly. And the life we had made together. and the things that we shared, and just our wonderful relationship, and said, I don't want to lose that. It's not worth it. So I decided at that point that I would try to believe for the sake of our marriage and for the sake of our children, for the sake of my love. And I pretended for probably 4 or 5 years that I believed. And
you convinced yourself
I did
a lot
convince
of the
myself.
time, too.
Yeah, I met with the stake president. I met with the bishop. I bought scriptures. I spent $80 on a brand new set of scriptures that I tried.
I remember you being more gung-ho after a certain conference than I was.
Yeah.
You're like, I got to get my act together. I got to this and that. And, okay, here's what we're going to do.
I really, really, really tried. And deep down, I just didn't believe.
What about when I had that spiritual experience in the temple about my mom passing away?
I believed that you had that experience.
But you don't try to explain what it is?
No, I don't.
What power it is? What?
No,
It just is. I experienced it.
You experienced. I'm not. I have no problem in embracing the fact that you had that experience and that it was real, and that in some ways it was a prophecy for you. We don't need to go into any more detail than that, but
yeah.
But it was very real for you, and it still impacts you to this day. I don't have any problem in admitting that.
But you don't have to have an explanation for where it came from, why that happened, a power, a source.
No.
You just leave it unknown.
I leave it unknown, yeah.
What do you call that unknown?
I don't know. I guess to me, knowing that you had that experience and that it was so sacred and so personal to you is enough. I have no desire to come marching in after the fact to try and explain it away or to try and justify it and say, well, it must have been your mind, or it must have been Satan, or it must have been an alien from another planet.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, I'm just wondering, in an effort to try to connect more, if there was some way we could refer to this unknown stuff, because it seems like this is true for unbelievers, atheists, or different, whatever you are. You may identify with the idea that, yes, there's always going to be these things that seem very miraculous, mysterious, the unknown, right? And we can't explain them. There's not a way to explain it. I'm not going to try to. It just is. So is there a way to refer to that in a way where we're both comfortable and yet feel like it's a higher power, a deity, not necessarily a god or a deity, but I don't know. I don't even know.
The divine.
The divine, the universe, I don't know, something so we can still feel like we're connecting spiritually, that there's something wonderful and mysterious about the unknown.
I think that's, yeah,
that mystical feeling of little tinglies you get.
Yeah, I mean,
and connecting together in that way, it matters.
It matters to you.
It matters to me a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's ample room to bond over that. I'm trying to think what I was going to say.
Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Sorry. Do you want to adjust it? We can pause for a second.
Okay.
I feel like, for me personally, I have no right to trample on your spiritual experiences and try to explain them away.
Is that because you can't stand it when other people trample on your experiences and try to explain that away.
It bothers me.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I did try to trample on your experiences, maybe not to your face, but in my mind.
Yeah.
But I don't feel right about that, because those experiences are real to you. They happened. And you don't need me or anybody else coming in after the fact and saying, well, blah, 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 blah. You didn't experience what you think you experienced. This was in your head. You're a little bit nutso because of it. Because they were real.
Yeah.
Or
maybe what you experienced wasn't what you thought you experienced, or...
Yeah.
This is how I experienced it, and this is how I interpreted it, people. And that affects me.
Yeah. So in terms of bonding over this type of stuff, we had some spiritual experiences while I was going through my believing, non-believing days.
Yeah, we did. A lot.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest one that I remember is singing in state conference. You were the choir director.
Yes.
And we both were burst into tears. We could hardly control ourselves.
That song. Yeah.
Yeah, and looking back on it, for me personally, what brought me to tears, it was singing Come, Come Ye Saints. Neal here just wanted to change the story just a little bit. It was not Come, Come Ye Saints that we sang, it was the Spirit of God. And the thought of all the Mormons who died coming across the plains and what they sacrificed for their religion overwhelmed me, and I couldn't control myself, or I couldn't control my emotions, I guess is a better way to put it. I could not control it. It just resonated to the very depths of my soul, what they did and what they sacrificed. And that was a tremendous experience that Naomi and I had. What are your thoughts about that?
I must be misremembering what the song was.
Yeah, it was Come, Come Ye Saints.
Huh. Mac Wilberg?
Yeah, it was a Mac Wilberg arrangement.
Okay.
Yeah, so it comes in, the men in that arrangement, it starts off with a I think it's a quartet singing, and then the men come in and start singing
starts
pickup.
Off with one guy.
Yeah, and then it goes into is it quartet or three people?
It just keeps building.
Yeah, it's a tremendous arrangement. I'll probably put some of it in the background to this conversation, just to give you an idea as to what it sounds like. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's very moving. And from my perspective, it's very emotional. From Naomi's perspective, it's very spiritual.
Yeah.
And
there are those things that transcend this world, I guess, is how Thoreau and other people that late at night don't come into my head, to my memory.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's okay. So back to the story. Sorry to get sidetracked.
So yeah, you had this big up and down roller coaster, trying to believe, not believing, having that go on, and I imagine there wasn't really opportunity to give in to believing, because my mom was dying of cancer, and you were traveling all the time, and I was trying to hold down the fort, and my health wasn't very good, and so when do you remember the shit hitting the ceiling, hitting the fan, hitting the ceiling, going everywhere?
Well, I don't want to get into...
Because I know when I do.
I don't want to get into too much of what was going on in my life on the road, but let's just say I wasn't living the gospel while I was on the road. But I was living it when I was at home over the weekends. I was teaching in church. I was going to the temple and pretending that I believed every weekend. And then one night, well, about 2 weeks before that one night, I had started keeping a journal, transcribing all my thoughts and feelings. And the more I wrote, the more I realized I couldn't live with myself, living a double life of belief and non-belief. I couldn't do it anymore. I played it for 5 years. I pretended for 5 years. And it was becoming unbearable for me. The cognitive dissonance, the fight to tell the kids one thing while I believed something else was overwhelming. And one night, Naomi it was a Sunday night, was having a conversation with the kids and was talking about Joseph Smith. And I remember sitting in our living room, watching her say that, and she bore her testimony, and then she turned to me and said, "Neal, don't you want to share your testimony with the kids?" And I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. It was too much to ask. She didn't. Naomi, I don't know if you knew you were asking too much at the time, or if you didn't.
I did. I was happily in denial.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I was, because if I had one more thing on my plate, I was gonna break. I was gonna die. There was so much going on. And
your mom had just passed away.
So I wasn't stupid. I could tell all the signs were there. It's not like you can hide everything, although I know I had no idea to what extent it was. I had huge suspicions and didn't go out of my way to find out because I was afraid of the answer. If I got the right answer, if I found out how bad it really was, I knew I wouldn't be able to deal with it. There was too much going on, and so I never asked. I just went with what I could, pushed what I could, and then pushed the rest away.
You did ask one time, and I told you, and that was a horrible night.
That's the time I'm talking about, when everything hit the...
No, I'm talking about when I called you one night and was crying, and you're like, "Have you been drinking?"
And yeah. I mean, I knew you were doing... No, I didn't know how bad it was, though.
Mm-hmm.
I figured you had been drinking here and there, like during the times that you don't believe, the times that you do believe. I thought you were still doing this roller coaster of believe and not believe, and, doing other stuff, drinking the coffee, whatnot. But I had no idea that it was... Well, no. Okay. I had an idea that it was to the point where you didn't believe in a God, but I was in such great denial that I wanted to believe that wasn't true, that I would take anything you gave me. Like any sort of hope that you gave me that maybe you did. And go, okay, we can still work with this.
Let's in my defense, just a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, I was trying to convince myself at the same time I was trying to convince you. Like, I really tried to do self-talk that I believed, and then it just became too much. But yeah, I wasn't trying to convince myself that I wasn't drinking. I mean, I knew that. you didn't know while I was on the road. But let's just put this out there right now. The question may come up in believers' minds, did you stop going to church and stop believing so you can start drinking? And the answer to that is no. I started drinking after I made the decision that I no longer believed. It was the natural course. But I did not tell Naomi about it for several years. I was on the road. I was doing my own thing. I'd call home at night tipsy and convince myself that she didn't hear it in my voice and that she didn't know, and convince myself that I was putting on a good act. And Naomi, you said you...
Yeah, I didn't want to ask. I mean, I figured you were, and I'm like, no, I'm going to tell myself he's not.
And this was almost every night that I called home, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, my fear...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think you were drinking every day.
I don't think I was drinking every day, but I was drinking...
A lot.
A lot. I mean, I wasn't drinking to the point where I was passed out drunk. By any means. It was more of a beer or two every night, and some nights was more than others, but yeah, I did drink. Still do. But
do you ever go a day without drinking?
Yeah, occasionally. Not every day.
Do you remember the last day you had?
I think Saturday drinking? Or Sunday. Saturday. Yeah. But I was doing all that stuff in my mind on the sly. And in Naomi's world of denial on the sly. But she knew, and I wish I would have had the courage to have been more honest.
I didn't know that it was as much as it was at all. I had like that sinking, I wonder.
Right.
It seems like, no, I'm not even going to let myself go there. Type of feeling.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about honesty. And I don't want to get into any dishonest habits that I had or didn't have. But let's talk about the reason behind dishonesty, especially with a non-believer towards a believer. And
fear.
Fear, yes.
It all comes down to fear.
That's exactly what it is.
And that's why I avoided it, was fear.
And I feared, what is she going to do if she finds out? I drink, and I'm okay with that. Me personally, I was okay with that. The lying, I didn't see any other way to do it than to lie about it. Because I was afraid of what she would do. Would she leave me? Would she kick me out of the house? Would she divorce me? I had no idea. The unknown scared the living shit out of me.
But you weren't afraid enough to change your behavior.
I had no desire to change my behavior.
Because you thought you wouldn't get caught.
Because I thought I wouldn't get caught, and because it felt good.
You didn't think you were hurting me.
Yeah. What I did on my own time didn't hurt you because you weren't there. You didn't see me when I came home. I was Peter Priesthood, doing everything that you expected me to do, going to the temple, giving blessings, talking to the bishop, teaching priesthood lessons, going home teaching. You know, I was checking off this list of expectations that I thought I needed to fulfill to be the husband that you wanted me to be. While at the same time living this second life while I was on the road and not being who you wanted me to be. I was afraid. So you probably, this is probably the first you've heard of how dishonest or how far down the road I was. From your perspective now, what should I have done?
I can't even. I have no idea, because it would have played out different. I don't know.
If I would have been honest with you and said, Naomi, every night I'm leaving on Sunday, I come home on Friday.
It would have taken a lot of open, honest stuff way before it got there. You needed to be saying, hey, I'm reading this. This is what I'm thinking. I'm scared about this. I would have needed to be part of the process. It needed to be way before the point where you're like, okay, I don't think there's a God. Drinking's fine.
So looking back on the story of my disaffection, how should I have handled it? Like if everything was perfect, I mean, beside me still believing when I say everything is perfect.
Yeah.
If I say
well,
everything,
you would have come to me, and I would have told you what to read and what to think, and then you'd be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So let's pretend that I would still end up where I am today as a non-believer. Mm-hmm. How would you have preferred that I approach this process?
I would have liked to have heard the first night when you were reading scriptures, you calling me and saying, hey, I had this weird thought and weird experience, and where's that coming from? I wanted to be a part. The thing that ruins a marriage is the not talking because of the fear.
Right.
Why do I keep doing that? Because you can't deal with what you don't know.
And I was giving you a lot of I don't knows.
Yeah. And to be fair, you didn't know, but it would have been nice to be able to have open, honest communication between the two of us of the I don't knows. This is what's running through my head. And instead, it was me just getting emotional, like, oh, my perfect world's going to shatter. It was not perfect, by the way. But what I know is going to shatter.
Your fairy tale.
Yeah. This idea of how life is going to go, and we've already agreed upon all these things of these are our goals, these are what we're doing, that's all taken care of. We figured that out already. Check. Just talking about each thing right as it came up and being a part of that.
I wish I would have done that. I really do. I think...
I don't know what would be different. I mean, for all we know, we may have decided throughout the process, hey, we can't do this. We may have decided to both agree on it on one side or the other. I don't know.
Yeah, my biggest regret is not...
But I wouldn't be as hurt, and you wouldn't have suffered as much.
Yeah. My biggest regret is not coming to you and being a lot more open and honest. I think the biggest thing that has hurt our marriage, because our marriage has been through some rocky patches, the biggest thing that has hurt our marriage has been me not being completely upfront and honest with you. I've been afraid to tell the truth. I've been afraid of the consequences. I've been afraid of getting in trouble. And I figured it would be a lot easier to just play Mr. Passive Aggressive and pretend that these huge life-altering thoughts that are going through my mind aren't there to the most important person in my life, and that is you. Of all the people who I should have talked with about this process, of all the people, it should have been you, and it wasn't you.
It should have been me.
It was my coworkers. It was the guys I was on the road with.
It's my brother.
It was your brother.
It was your brother and my brother and everyone but me.
Yeah. So let me apologize for that publicly. I know that it cannot undo all of the past. But I hope that if somebody's listening to this who's going through that struggle, they will be honest with their spouse. Learn from my mistakes.
And spouses, try to be the kind of people in a relationship where you don't seem like the parent, you don't seem like the mom or the dad or somebody to be feared, but that you figure out a way to communicate in a way that you both feel safe. And we're still doing that. We're still trying to figure that out and very daringly doing it on air. So
yeah. And I don't think I have the tools to do that.
No.
I really didn't have the tools to be completely upfront and honest with you, Naomi. I
don't know if I had the tools to be able to hear it either, to be able to talk about it.
Well, let's just play a little bit of psychoanalysis. The one time I did try to be open and honest,
I was horrible.
You said, I don't know if I can be with someone who believes that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make you a bad person.
Which I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't say I couldn't. I just was like, I don't know if I could.
So what she said as I don't know, she was just wondering out loud, I took completely personally and ran with it, and it dictated 4 years of lies until I finally came clean with my unbelief. But both of our lack of training or lack of ability to handle these huge conversations, and we've always been good communicators, so it's not like we've fought and been difficult with each other.
It's been easy.
Yeah, but these big, huge conversations that we never thought we'd have, we weren't prepared for. I wasn't prepared for.
And the truth is, you don't have to have these big, huge conversations that are so scary if you're having the little ones along the way.
Yeah.
If it had started right there with the, whoa, I had this thought while I was reading, it would have been a whole bunch of little small things that we were talking about. It wouldn't have been this, oh, by the way, I think I don't believe in God. So I'm going to go have dinner now. Like that, it's not... The problems start in a relationship when you stop talking.
Which is what we did.
Yeah.
We talked about everything else.
Yeah.
But the most important aspect of a relationship got swept under the rug.
We talked a lot, but it wasn't honest talking.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It wasn't sharing stuff that we knew the other one probably really wouldn't want to hear.
So let's talk about that just a little bit. One of the ground rules that you and I have made now that we are being more honest and open with each other, and let me say in Naomi's defense, she is pretty much honest and open with me about everything. Like, I hear everything that's going on in her mind. The problem isn't with her, it's with me. But one of the things that we talked about as we've started this process is basically laying a ground rule that says, you can tell me anything and I'm not just going to turn my back on you and walk away. It might be hard, it might be difficult to hear, but we have survived for 18 years and I'm not just going to turn my back on that.
Get it out there and we'll try to work through it.
Have you been afraid that I would walk away from you? How so?
If I told you how I felt, how hurt I was, the fears I have.
Still?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, there's honesty, but then there's also like when your wife says, hey, does my butt look fat? You know, you don't say yes.
I've never said that.
You say something like, well, I like this other dress a lot better, you know?
and you don't like offer, like I don't know, I want you to offer this information of what you're feeling and what you're thinking, and that's what I'm asking you to do. And yet we all do those things where we don't say everything that's on our mind to spare each other's feelings. You're not going to come home and say, "Hon, it looks like you've put on a few." You know, that's honesty, but that's not what I'm asking for. And yet how do you draw that line when you know what you have to tell me and what you're feeling and what you're saying is going to hurt? It's not going to be fun for me to hear. Yeah, well, like, how do you do that? It's like, I'm asking the question because we're still figuring that out. It's different for every couple, I'm sure, but being able to look your partner in the eye and sit down and say, okay, I have something that I have to put out there because I can't live unless I share this with the person that means the most with me, and it's most likely going to really hurt. And I don't want to hurt you, but I have to talk about it, and I want to talk to the person I love the most. And like, preparing yourself as a listener to that is really scary, because sometimes what you want to say when some comes out of their mouth is not verbal, it's with your fist. And no, I don't do that.
But you've wanted to.
Hasn't everyone?
Yeah. This was a hard conversation to have.
Really hard.
But I think it was important.
Are you recording us?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Having said all that, we are glad that you made it to the end.
Is this the end?
I think it's the end tonight.
Well, that doesn't wrap up at all.
Okay, what do you want to do to wrap up?
I don't even know.
Do you have any closing thought? I mean, we said a lot, and we don't have a huge conclusion. But to me, the biggest takeaway from tonight's conversation...
Whatever your process is, whatever you're going through, however scary or ugly it is, you gotta talk about it with the person you love the most.
Be honest. And maybe you need to sign a little contract with them before you talk. I will not leave you, and you will not leave me as a result of this conversation.
Well,
you may not need to sign the contract.
There are some things that...
Yeah, but if you're
you're gonna...
Yeah, I mean, if you've had an affair, then okay. That's a little bit
different conversation.
But if you're going through a faith crisis...
Yeah, I don't know.
Talk about it.
The truth is, I don't have all the answers to that. We don't.
No.
Nobody does.
Absolutely not.
You can talk to your counselor, your therapist, you can think you know the exact right thing to do, but somehow you have to trust the person, or at least be willing to try. And I trust that you and me are going to give it both our all, no matter what. And while there's any life left in this marriage, we're gonna try to save it.
And I think there's a lot of life left.
There's lots of signs of life.
Yeah, it's not like our marriage is on the rocks.
We're thriving.
Yeah, we are.
But only because
of counseling
and talking
a lot.
If I had my way, every couple would go to counseling just as part of being married.
Yeah. There's a lot of tools that our childhood, most people's childhoods don't equip us for. Even with Naomi and I, who have communicated very well from the beginning, didn't have all the tools.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you want to go to a class where you can learn from a teacher a bunch of tried and true tools and technologically... Techniques, right. Learn techniques of how to solve life problems. Who has their whole life to spend studying that unless it's your actual job? So take advantage of that.
Yep. And in the meantime, this is a terrible segue, but in the meantime, feel free to leave your comments on our website, unequally-yoked.net. Or you can check us out on our Facebook page, Unequally Yoked, and if you are so inclined, ask to join our private group, which is for both sides of a marriage, both the husband and the wife, the believer and the non-believer, to talk about with each other, having a more open and honest group to talk about what's going on and what works and what doesn't work.
And maybe give you the guts to approach your spouse with those issues you're scared to.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are not a replacement for your spouse.
No, please don't use this as a replacement.
You gotta talk to each other.
Yeah. Okay, that's all. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.